Welcome to Life Beyond Tax. Today we track India on her progress to becoming a near cashless society, which has two distinct advantages. It disintegrates the problem of fake currency notes and of course black money too. But even while we have miles to go, the preparation from the roots up will pave the way for a digitally integrated society. We have with us today one of these key persons. He is an engineering, management and strategy wizard who understands how to develop and scale innovations. His agenda is to empower the poor and low-income groups through the direct delivery of financial benefits like subsidies for the poor, financial assistance for students, support for the farmers, small credit for businesses and even health-related payments. Meet Mr. Krishnan Dharmarajan, Executive Director of the Center for Digital Financial Inclusion, a private institution which was set up last year for design, development, delivery and scaling of innovative financial products to be implemented in the areas of health, education and agriculture and to have a huge impact on the lives of underserved Indians. Before donning this avatar, Mr. Krishnan was Commissioner Systems with the Central Board of Excise and Customs Department of Revenue. He has also played a crucial role in the design and development of the GST network and even conceptualized the idea of national e-governance for the Government of India. Along the way, he has won a number of awards for his innovative work, one of them being the development of a mobile banking framework for the unbanked. Let's meet Mr. Krishnan Dharmarajan. Welcome to Life Beyond Tax, Mr. Krishnan. You have been quite a rolling stone. You have moved from e-governance to GST, bringing innovation into various departments of the Government of India. What have been your most memorable moments with the government?
When you say rolling stone, it probably starts from the time I was an engineer and actually developed an interpreter for a language as part of my final year project.
Which language?
There was a language for coding artificial intelligence systems. So I wrote an interpreter for that language, and the language can be used to design cognitive models and systems. So from then, actually, the movement to the government has been a bit of a big leap. And interestingly, the government has given me a lot of opportunity to do this. It gives you very complex problems to deal with, and it also gives you the sense of scale. Here, anything that you do immediately impacts millions. So the idea of innovating in scale is something that comes naturally in the government. So coming back, the interesting things in the government are quite a few. Right from the initial days in our own department, CBEC. The CBEC was the pioneer in putting out systems where electronically one could file documents. And this was way back in 95, 96, even before the private sector was talking about it.
Like the e-filing of returns.
E-filing and all that.
Yeah.
And today people talk e-governance, but CBEC was doing e-governance before the term was being bandied about in the official circus. We didn't call it e-governance, we called it just e-filing and stuff. But what was done, say, 20 years back by CBEC, even now some government departments are still trying to catch up there. So that is how advanced we were at that time, because this is a new idea. Then after that, inside when I went to the Department of Information Technology, there again, one had a chance to do different kind of innovations. One is at the organizational level, creating an organization which can actually be an apex body for e-governance, which means looking at e-governance across all sectors, across projects, large projects. Say, if you say income tax is one big project, municipalities across 1,000 municipalities in the country is one big project. So like that, the government had identified 24 to 26 projects, which has now become 30. So they were part of a national e-governance plan. So the challenge was that how can we create an organizational structure which can oversee and support all this as a program at a national level. Then second interesting thing which we did, among the many other things, is how can we use the mobile as a tool or as a device to reach out financial services, basic financial services to the poor, like putting money into a bank account, withdrawing it, transferring money and all that. Because the poor man doesn't have a bank account, but he has a mobile. We actually worked on a framework, how can we take banking to the unbanked, the country. And that framework was then accepted by the government as a whole. And when we had to develop that framework, it was in coordination with the TRAI, the RBI, the various ministries, the Home Ministry bringing in the security angle, and of course it was all kind of coordinated by the Department of IT Secretariat. And I was kind of anchoring that process across all the departments.
So what did this application enable?
What it enabled is that, at a rural area, a person could actually do transactions through a bank account just using a mobile, and a simple mobile.
Transferring of funds.
Transferring of funds, putting money to a bank account, withdrawing money from a bank account. All of that can be done by a poor man just using a mobile.
But he would actually need to go to the bank to deliver the money.
No bank. So there was a concept of business correspondence, which the banks operate through business correspondence across the country in rural areas, because there isn't enough business to set up a brick and mortar branch. So you would actually have just a business correspondent. So
a retail agent.
A retail agent, you could call him that. So till then, there was also a regulatory constraint that only not-for-profit companies or retired teachers and things like that could become business correspondents. So we made out a case and allowed any private company also to become a business correspondent, which effectively meant that all these large telecom companies and FMCG outlets, which have large retail networks, they could all tie up with banks and become business correspondents of banks. So at one stroke, you had increased the reach of the banking sector through other retail channels to reach the poor. So you could actually go to a say Airtel or Vodafone outlet, and he can develop as a business correspondent for a bank and do the transaction.
Okay.
So that was a major...
Which means the villager can just go over to this business correspondent, hand over the money, which would be effectively transferred into the bank account, and he can check on his mobile.
Yeah, on his mobile. And he can withdraw from there also. So this was a very effective kind of a tool, device. And we actually worked out the model and how it will work, what are the regulatory constraints, and what are the security issues. All of that was done very systematically, what we brought out in 2010. So that was a phase of reform of how you could use mobiles to reach. The second phase is now coming, where what the government has now allowed, or the RBI has allowed, is it has allowed a new concept called payments banks, in the sense that we have this 11 new licensees which can set up banks which will do everything, but they would not give credit. So it can accept money, it can give interest on that money, it can facilitate remittances, facilitate payments and all that. Except that if he wants a loan, this bank cannot give it.
Or an overdraft.
Not at all. So, and which are the companies now? Again, many of these large telecom providers, in fact, the Post Office, Post Bank of India network, they've all been made into payments banks. So this is the next big revolution which is going to hit. A lot of people are observing this sector with a lot of interest, because this could be a game changer. Because at one stroke, you're leveraging this network, and you're also going to use technology effectively. Technology and financial inclusion are very closely linked, and the only way you can make financial inclusion happen is through technology.
True. So in a way, the Prime Minister's Jan Dhan Yojana has enabled the use of mobile applications.
Yes.
Yeah, because now more people have bank accounts.
Yes.
And which accounts are going to be leveraged into the next level?
Absolutely. They have already bank accounts which can be leveraged. And again, these new payments banks could also open more accounts if required, or more interesting kind of models can evolve. So this was another interesting work which I did. And then we also recently, working on the setting up of goods and services tax as a company.
That's right. That was a big one. You implemented the pilot project for GST.
Pilot projects, we kind of coordinated it across all the states and the center to do that. So that to actually demonstrate that it is possible, involving the select companies also to participate in the pilot. And also a organizational innovation, in the sense of creating a company which would actually be a private company managing tax, which again is a very new thing. But we did it because from years of experience across the government, one knows that the government has inherent limitations in doing technology-driven projects. So you need that flexibility, which only a private company can allow to get in talent to do it. So the
Sure.
whole thing is of talent.
Yeah,
It's
access
not of
to
money.
talent.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's not about money at all. Okay, people somehow seem to think that you throw 100 crores and you'll make a project happen. It will not happen. You need the right people. The other innovation there was that we had a 49% stake for the government, 51-49 company, and then that again was distributed between the center and all the states. So every state has a stake in the company. So it's like an entity which collectively implements a project across center and the states, with the central and state government having shareholding in that company and yet keeping it private. So it's a pretty unique entity. So that was another exciting work, which was the last thing one did before one came out of the government.
So, what brought you into digital financial inclusion?
You see, it could have been anything else. Very frankly, it's not the subject area which is important. It is more of the approach you take to developing new ideas, working with multiple stakeholders, exciting them, and making big projects happen.
And what are the new ideas and innovations you're working with for DFI, Digital Financial Inclusion?
So right now, this organization that I'm currently heading is called the Center for Digital Financial Inclusion. So we look at how we leverage technology to reach financial services, more on the line of what I had done earlier. Several interesting things. We look at different kind of themes. So one of the themes we are looking at is how do we promote, say, cashless transactions, because for us, when we analyzed, we did a research that cash is an area where there is a huge expense incurred by all agencies. There's a transaction cost to doing any transaction through cash. From the perspective of financial inclusion, cashless is very important, because today, to convert one's deposit in a bank into cash, for us, we could go to an ATM and draw money, and an ATM transaction costs something like 17 rupees per transaction. If you even say round it off to 20 rupees, so we are allowed 5 free transactions a month. So that comes to 100 rupees per person. So it costs a lot of money, except that it is not visible to us because it's being subsidized under a regime. The same regime is not subsidizing cash withdrawals for the poor villager when he is going and drawing money under the Rural Employment Guarantee Program, or when under Janani Suraksha Yojana, if a mother is drawing money for after a pregnancy, what the government is giving, it is not subsidizing. So the subsidy actually should be flowing there and not here. You are actually subsidizing the rich, interestingly. But for withdrawals, for transactions, for the real section of the population which needs it, the subsidies are not sufficient, and therefore there is no business model that is developing. So actually making this, say, 10 crore or 17 crore Jan Dhan accounts and all these people going and drawing money, it's not going to be viable. So the way forward is that you have to create a cashless ecosystem at the village level and also at the semi-urban level and all that, for even this segment of the population today which is not used to cashless. Interestingly, the government has issued them Jan Dhan cards, which makes it possible. It also has, many of them have mobiles today. The mobile connectivity is really very high, even in the rural areas. So you have devices for them to engage in the cashless. So how do you now create this ecosystem there so that those accounts will now start, entertaining and start using cashless transactions? Otherwise, as soon as you put money into an account which belongs to a poor man, he is going to withdraw all the money and go away, because for him it is a 20 kilometer or a 10 kilometer travel to his bank. And if that is the way bank accounts are going to operate, the banks are not going to make any money out of it. So the model will not work. It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
So the money has to stay there, and people have to do all their transactions cashless. So how do you promote a cashless ecosystem? So one of the research work we are doing is that how do you create a sustainable or a low cost cashless model around small kirana stores and hawkers and all that. I mean, you should be able to do a cashless transaction, even maybe buying from a hawker, street hawker, or from a
So as long as his bank account card, it needs to be accepted by the kirana stores.
Yes. Yeah. So how do you create an acceptance infrastructure at at a rural level for these kind of users. And what is a model that is created to actually bring down the cost of a transaction for such cashless? Okay.
Sure.
And can we tie up those cashless transactions with credit for those small shops? Today, a small shop doesn't have any credit. He has to borrow money at very high prices. Okay, very high charges. So can we use that as a vehicle to give him credit also, small shop? So there is a win-win for everybody in creating this ecosystem. So we are working on a model. We have a collaborative research project with the IIM Bangalore. Simultaneously, we are also looking at some policy level. We did some research and we have come out with a suggestion that if you actually give an income tax rebate for a certain amount, above a certain percentage of transactions being done cashless, it can actually change the entire behavior of people. So today you walk to a shop and he says, no, I won't accept a card, you please go to the ATM and draw money. So there is no incentive for you to use cashless. There is a disincentive for the shopkeeper to accept cashless because maybe there is a tax implication, maybe there is this 1.5-2% of charge which he has to pay.
That's
so all of that is there, so he doesn't.
Or he has to pay VAT on the transaction.
VAT on the transaction. But you have no incentive to go to him or go to the next shop where he is accepting cashless. So we are trying to say if you have a threshold, if you say more than 85% or 90% of your expenditure, you do cashless, which can be easily evidenced from your bank statement. Any bank statement will do that. And at the end of the year, you could probably get back 5% tax rebate or something. So if government can introduce such a system, this simple incentive will kind of completely change behavior. It will create a demand for cashless transactions across the country. It will encourage more shops to go cashless because they will lose customers otherwise. And it will actually drive down the costs also of the cashless by increasing the volumes. So by one single stroke of policy, and we have worked out the numbers, we have actually shown that government will actually make money out of this. But the bigger impact is you're cleaning up the entire economy because all these are going to be tax-paid transactions. They are going to be account-to-account transactions and very little likelihood of more difficult to move black money around these circles. Okay.
Sure.
So government would, by the single stroke, by giving this rebate, encourage a whole lot of people to go cashless. Actually, a lot of people today are honest taxpayers. The entire middle class is honest taxpayer. There is no incentive government gives for honesty. There is, of course, penalty on dishonesty. So if you actually give this as a benefit for honest people, he would freely do cashless and all of that is tracked. So the avenues for actually moving black money will go down because there is a much wider pipe of white transactions across the country which will work. If you look at purchases made in shops and the shopkeeper who does this cannot hide VAT, he has to pay VAT.
Sure.
Tomorrow in the GST regime, we need to track invoices because the whole GST framework is invoicing and taxation based on invoices. Okay, so for GST, it's very important we have invoice-driven transactions.
Right.
And this is going to be a direct facilitation to that. As soon as you do this,
Yeah.
you have given a fillip to the entire GST framework. So there is a win-win around this.
But the honesty incentive would have to be higher than the tax paid out on a open, transparent transaction.
Correct. So that the tax rebate should be able to offset the positivity out of all this.
Sure.
So that is what we have calculated and shown. So this is an example of the kind of innovation policy or research driven innovation we are doing at a kind of a policy at a program level also, right? So this is one of the ideas that we are working on.
And any interesting scheme or innovation that you're working on at the moment, or something which has had to have a change of approach, considering that the situation on the ground is different from what you had anticipated?
These things are there. Another interesting thing we are now working is that with the trying to develop a concept with the government of Kerala where they give lotteries. The government gives lotteries for people to buy goods whenever people buy in the shopping festival against a VAT receipt. So they are ensuring that people are paying VAT. And there is a lottery tied to it. So it's a very interesting idea. It's running in Kerala. So we said, can we overlay a cashless theme on that? So we are now trying to have a digital shopping festival, where in addition to this, if you do a cashless transaction, you will be given a digital lottery ticket over the mobile.
Let's hope we can reduce the gap between the have and the have-nots through digital financial inclusion. We wish you all the best, Mr.
Thanks so
Krishnan.
much, Asha. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for
much.
being
Thank
with
you.
us.